As Pastor mentioned, I've had the privilege of working in Christian camp for many, many years. And most of those years have been at the Wilds. How many of you have ever heard of the Wilds? The Wilds camp, okay? The Wilds camp is down in North Carolina. It's up in the mountains of North Carolina. And it is actually one of the premier camps in what we would call independent fundamental Baptist churches of America. And actually we run over 1,000 campers every week during the summer. So we're ministering to over 10,000 young people. At the same time, we'll be running 800 teenagers. We would be running about 250 junior campers as well. And so those are two different groups, right? We have teenagers and we have children. So the junior campers would be those who would be from about the age of 8 or 9 years of age up through the age of 13. And then the teen campers, of course, would be any who are going into the 7th grade. For I know that probably the education system is different in your countries, but the 13-year-olds through 18-year-olds and even graduates of high school. And so I've had that privilege of ministering to teenagers. And as you all know, children and teenagers, this is a huge part of our ministry. This is absolutely crucial. We cannot relegate our ministry to just adults. We need to realize that generations matter. Every generation matters because they're the next Christians who are going to be Christian leaders in our world. And so I want to share with you some things. I hope that there'll be some philosophical things, but there'll hopefully be some practical things that I can share with you today that I hope will be a help to all of you. Now, first of all, I want to find out how many of you have ever tried to run some sort of a children's or youth camp. You have tried to do that in your country, okay? I'm sure many of you have done this, okay? And I would love to hear the stories of the success or the lack of success, or how well it went, or maybe would you do it again, or those kinds of things. And I'm sure that most of you probably have really good stories of how God has changed people's lives through Christian camping. Now, before we begin, I want you to just tell me, what do you think share with me a big advantage of having a camp activity, some sort of a camp activity. And of course, a Christian camp is any time we're using the outdoors or activities, maybe in an extended time, to instruct in the Word of God. What are some of the advantages of that? Okay, is it easier to get unsaved teenagers to come to an outdoor camp type activity than it is to just say, hey, we want you to come to church? Okay, so here's a huge advantage. Okay, so if you're wanting to write down advantages of having something like this, here's an advantage. It's a whole lot easier for unsaved heathen people to come to an event that is using an activity or the outdoors, whether it's a short-term thing or whether it's a long-term thing. It's often a lot easier to get unsaved people. One example of this is this week, on Thursday night, they're having, here at the church, they're having a dodgeball tournament for teenagers. This is just an example of something happening actually this week that shows you that it's a whole lot easier to get teenagers to come to that than to just say, hey, we're having our youth group at church on Sunday night, preaching session, and they're like, well, that doesn't sound like really cool. You know, unsaved people have a hard time sometimes just coming to church. Now, this doesn't mean that we don't invite them to church. It just means we need to have some of these activities because this is a good advantage, is that it's something that it gets them there quicker. Okay, what else? What's another advantage of having some sort of a camp, whether it's an overnight camp, whether it's just all day, or whether it's even one evening where you're having like a big activity and you're drawing people in? What's another advantage? Don't be shy. What's that? Building relationships, right? Okay? It's a lot easier environment to get close to those visitors, to get close to those unsaved young people or teenagers, and whoever's working the activity, whoever's working at the camp, intentionally getting one-on-one with those young people or children and getting to know them. Relationships is what helps bring people back to hear more. And so that's a whole lot easier than walking into an auditorium where there's 50 or 100 people or whatever, and they feel out of place. They feel totally out of place. Okay? That's a great advantage. What's another advantage? What's another advantage of a Christian camp or an activity? We have our youth pastor back here, Pastor Brandon. Any advantages of camp? Separation. Yes, okay, that's another advantage. You can actually address them according to their age group because they're pulled away from just being mixed in with everybody. You know, I don't know how it is at your churches, but a lot of churches in America that their children and teenagers and adults are all in the auditorium, and often they're in the auditorium for many of the services. And some churches have a junior church during the morning or whatever, so separating the age groups so that you can have an isolated time and teaching on their level. Brandon, Pastor Brandon, he's the youth pastor here. You separate them from their typical environment. Absolutely. That is huge. Now, again, I'm speaking from the cultural perspective of American society, but I'm sure many of you even have these too, but look, right? Okay, what happens when they come to camp? You know what they do? They take their phones and they turn them in. They don't have a TV in the cabin. That would not be an appropriate Christian camp if we had TVs in the cabin where they could watch the movies that they typically watch or watch. So what are they? They're being separated from all the influences of the world. This is huge because then they can focus. They can focus on what they're being taught. And they can have a great time with a group of teenagers or a group of children. Okay, so I just want to kind of light a fire under you to say these are important activities. These are important opportunities for you in ministry. It can't happen every week. It takes a lot of planning. It takes a lot of people involved to do it right. But you ought to have times every year where, whether it's to influence by way of edification. In other words, maybe you should even state this is for Christian young people. Or whether you're going to do an outreach or some sort of camp or outreach or activity, and you're going to say, you know what, we want this to be an evangelistic outreach. There's a difference in how you would plan it, and there's a difference in what you would choose to do. And so these are important activities and times for your ministry. And I just want to encourage you, if you're not doing something like that, to start thinking about times during the year when maybe the children are out of school, the young people are out of school, and you could set up an all-day event, some sort of a camp event, or maybe even do a couple overnight at a place where you take them away from the world and you actually run a camp. And so as we get into this, you're going to see that this is a very important part of the ministry we have with the next generation. Now, I want to share with you what I call 4 ingredients of this type of ministry. 4 ingredients of a Christian camp. We could apply this across the board. We could apply this to a simple youth activity. We can apply this to actually the entire church ministry. And what you're going to notice is really this is foundational for really all of our ministry at large in any ministry that we're involved in. Okay, and I'm going to use the whiteboard so you can see the 4 ingredients of camp, and then we're going to talk about these in different ways. First of all, here's the first ingredient. Say it with me. Philosophy. Philosophy. Say it with me. Philosophy. Okay? Now, this is ingredient number 1. I hope you can read my chicken scratch up here. Okay? Philosophy. All right? Somebody tell me, what do you think that is? What is philosophy? Well, it comes from two words, right? It comes from the word philo and then the word wisdom. Good wisdom. Good wisdom is if we're going to take the etymology of the word, good wisdom. Okay? Or we could say it in a really, really simple, practical way. This word answers the question, why? Okay? So each of these ingredients are going to answer a question for us. Why? Or as we say it often at the Wilds, and we totally indoctrinate the staff with this. Philosophy is this: why you do what you do. Why you do what you do. Okay, I'm going to put Pastor Brandon on the spot again. Pastor Brandon, what is the philosophy behind the dodgeball tournament? Okay, so he's given us a foundational statement about why we're not having an activity just to have an activity. Now, sometimes the philosophy is really deep and needs to be really etched out, and sometimes it can be stated in just one simple statement. But philosophy is important because philosophy is the foundation. Philosophy does answer the purpose. Why? Why are we doing this? What is the purpose? Okay, now, if I were to ask you, where do we get our philosophy? Okay, this is a clear answer. So the first characteristic of our philosophy should be Bible-centered, Bible-based. It should be biblical. Okay, this does not necessarily mean that every activity you have to have a Bible reference. But actually, there is one that we use at the Wilds. They actually say it every day. All the campers say the verse. They say the verse 3 times a day. And it really does kind of summarize the philosophy of the camp and, frankly, the philosophy of our lives. 1 Corinthians 10:31. Whether, therefore, you eat or drink or whatever you do all to the glory of God. So, foundational philosophy. We want everything we do to be done for God's glory. Okay? Which, if we were to play that out in every area of ministry, we would say we want things to be done orderly. So you should never run an activity if it's not run decently and in order. Why? Because that doesn't glorify God. For teenagers to show up and to be standing around and there's no organization and there's nobody running anything, nobody is leading, and all of a sudden they're just wasting time, that's not orderly, that doesn't glorify God. It doesn't fit our philosophy. Biblical philosophy, foundational. All right? Now, let me ask you a question. Does philosophy, or should philosophy, should answering this question, should that change over time? In other words, does philosophy change over time? It should not be. There may be some exceptions to this. But overall, you want to state and believe a philosophy that is going to be stable over years. Years and years and years. Now, what changes? Philosophy does not change. The principles don't change. The biblical philosophy behind what we do in ministry should never change. But what can change? Methods, methodology. Okay, I was thinking about this morning, and a simple illustration of this is actually what I'm doing right now. Using a whiteboard like this is kind of out of date, right? This is an old method, especially in America, because we have this cool screen up here with a projector, and what's amazing is now I was just talking to Pastor about this, we can actually wirelessly connect an iPad to a projector, and we can put it on the screen. So I'm actually using a very old methodology. Is it wrong to change from a whiteboard to a screen? Okay? Some people have this idea that as soon as you put lyrics on a screen, you are compromising your philosophy. As soon as you do anything on a screen, you are compromising. Well, I think they've been trained improperly if they think that changing the method is changing the philosophy. Okay, so changing a method is not necessarily changing your philosophy. So philosophy is stable. Now, and one of the things that you can think about is the philosophy would include things like your mission statement. Okay, so we could put under here mission statement. Now, I'm not saying that every time you run a children's activity or a teen activity, you need to have a mission statement. I will tell you that wouldn't hurt. It wouldn't hurt you to really sit down and say, okay, just like we just put Pastor Joyner on the spot back there. Why are we doing this week? Okay, our mission in this dodgeball tournament is to have an activity that is exciting and energetic for the purpose of having young people come and sit under the gospel message. Okay, so you could make a mission statement about that one activity. But I definitely think if you're going to have an ongoing ministry of like every year you're going to do this certain event, and every year you're going to have maybe a camp, or every year you're going to have an evangelistic outreach of competition between teenagers, and which I do believe it would be a great idea. Then you ought to set out while you're beginning that, you ought to set out your philosophy. What is our mission statement? Or you could even, another thing you could put under here is core values. Core values. For example, a couple of the core values, let me give you the mission statement at the Wilds. You don't have to write this down, but just so you understand, there's a reason they're doing what they're doing. They are trying to present the truth of God in the love of God for the glory of God in the environment of a camp, in the environment of Christian camp. So that's their mission statement. Giving the truth of God in the love of God for the glory of God. It's a good mission statement that wraps up why. Why are we doing this? Okay, and then some of their core values are things like Bible-centered, refreshing enjoyment, servant-minded staff, and things like that would fit under. And I could give an entire couple hours just on philosophy, why we do what we do. Let's take this over to children's ministry. Do we have some Bible verses that would give us a foundational philosophy on children's ministry? What did Jesus himself say, right? Suffer the little children to come unto me, and forbid them not, for of such is the kingdom of heaven. It is sad to me personally, because I get the privilege of working with, when I'm working at the Wilds every summer, I'm now working with the children. And I'm very passionate about this. I think it's actually a very scriptural truth for us to put a lot of time, a lot of energy into children's ministry. Because Jesus said children are important. I say it this way, children are important, children are impressionable, children are immature, and children are imitators. You might want to write those down. Okay, let me go over them again. And this, I think these you can find scriptural references for these, especially the first one. Children are, number one, important. And again, this goes to philosophy. We're not just running activities. You have to have a good reason for what you're doing. And that good reason is, Jesus said they're important. Number one, they're important. Number two, they are impressionable. And we see this at camp all the time because we put them in a small group environment. And what happens is the children start acting like the counselor. And we talk to our counselors about this. And remember, the counselors that we hire here mostly are college students, so they don't have their own children. They don't really comprehend all of this yet. So we tell them these very things. You are an example of them. They are wanting to follow you, which goes along with the fourth one. They're imitators. All right, let me make sure I get them for you. Important, impressionable, immature. And we would all say amen to that, right? Why is that important to mention? Because children are going to make mistakes. We need to be patient with them. They're going to do crazy things sometimes. And then the last one is children are imitators. And we tell our counselors, you will be their hero. You will be their hero. And we need to understand that when we're leading children's ministry is that they look up to us. We need to take it very seriously. And what's amazing is children can learn a lot of things because they're impressionable. If they can learn how to get through a video game and memorize it in like a matter of 1 week, I think they should be able to be memorizing the Word of God. So those statements right there are a part of our philosophy, maybe for more of a children's ministry, a junior camp ministry. But what you're saying is that's where the stability is for our ministries. You have to know why you do what you do. And again, this could apply in every area of ministry, couldn't it? Why do we run our service the way we do? Why do we have certain elements in the service and certain elements we would never have in the service? Okay, we ought to know why. Why do we have deacons? Why do we have pastors? Now, some of these things are delineated in like a church constitution or maybe delineated in what some may call bylaws of an organization. But there should be good reasons for why we're doing what we're doing. And we could take this all the way down to some of what the things that people might call simple decisions. But there ought to be a reason. And if somebody came up to us and said, hey, can you tell me why we do this in the ministry? Then we ought to have thought through that. And if we haven't thought through that, we should say, you know what, let me get back to you on that. Because we need to decide why we're doing this, okay? And I think this is a good thing not only in ministry, but it's also good thing in life that we're making choices based upon a right biblical philosophy, all right? So that's number one, ingredient of what we're talking about, camp. Number two, and I want to say this is important, these ingredients should be in this order. There's nothing more important than why we're doing what we're doing. Ultimately for the glory of God and for the sake of His name and for the wonderful gospel that He's given to us. But now, ministry cannot happen without number two. And this is great because we're a part of this. People. And this answers the question, who? And we say it like this when we're teaching this at camp or when we've taken this across the world. And I would say to you, if you're interested in having help with training for camp, you please let me know. I can get you connected with an organization called Camps Abroad. It's an organization out of our camp at the Wilds that actually sends teams to different mission fields to train in this type of camping idea, camping philosophy. So I would be glad to encourage you down that road. You have my card, you have my email there on the back. If there's any way we can help you in this, okay? We want to be some of those people that help you. So when we train in this at camp, we say people. Who are the people? We are the people. Let's try that. Who are the people? We are the people. And isn't it great that though we're weak and frail and sinful people, God wants to, and He does, use us. Now, this is important because you cannot run an activity or a camp like we're talking about without people. It's really important that it's not just one person, but you've actually got a group of people in the ministry, and you are training them. Okay, so a couple things about this. First of all, you need to pick people who agree with your philosophy. There's nothing more dangerous in ministry than picking people solely because they're talented. Just because somebody's talented doesn't mean they agree with your philosophy. Just because somebody, and this is even more staggering, is sometimes just because people are trained doesn't mean they agree with your philosophy. Now, when I say this, there's always going to be things in the ministry that good people disagree about. We're not talking about agreeing 100% all the time. We're just talking about, in a general sense, they better be on board. They better be on board with this. You don't want to have fights going on. I mean, not literal fights, okay, but you don't want to have division going on with people that are supposed to be serving together. Okay, so the people need to be in agreement with your philosophy, which obviously would mean they need to be saved, right? I think I probably shouldn't have to say that, but they need to be saved. They need to be growing Christians. They need to be servants. They need to be focused on others, not themselves. These are all characteristics of people that we would want to pick, okay? And then not only do they need to agree with your philosophy, but they need to be trained. They need to be trained in your philosophy. So if you are the leader of the ministry and you're the one that's kind of envisioning and has the goal, you have the goal of this camp or this ministry activity, whatever it is, then you want to sit down with the people that are going to be involved and you want to express to them your philosophy. You express to them why you're doing what you're doing, and then in detail, you train them to what to expect when they come and help at this activity. And then you delegate to them different parts of that ministry that they can be involved in. Now, this is important because now we're talking about the people that utilize the philosophy to get something done. And notice we haven't even talked about the activity yet, right? Because the activity is number 3. And as long as you have a good philosophy and you have really good people that are on board with your philosophy, and I don't mean to diminish the next part that we're going to talk about, but you can do a lot of stuff with just this. And even if you feel like the activity was a flop, as we would say in America, in other words, it didn't go well, as long as you had a good philosophy and you had great people, then you probably will see some good ministry taking place. Okay? So I'm sure in all of your ministries, you're thinking about maybe some people that you could even get involved in stuff like this. Maybe a youth camp, a children's ministry, some sort of activity. One of the things that's done quite often in America is they have an activity where they invite the teenagers to come like from 5 o'clock to 10 o'clock, and they do it a couple nights, maybe 2 or 3 nights in a row. They feed them dinner, and they have competitions. They have big game competitions. In America, we call this the war. And in some countries, that wouldn't fly, okay, I know that. But we have what's called the Cola War, Pepsi versus Coke. Or we have what's called the Coffee War, which is here in America is Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks, okay? Or you could, I'm sure you could come up with all kinds of things in your different cultures, in your different countries, where you could invite and choose 2 teams, play some competitions, because we won't get into all of this today, but there is a philosophy behind competition. Competition is actually helping young people get excited about something that's bigger than themselves. Join the team. Get involved in the team. And there's a reason why a lot of youth work in America kind of rallies around competition, because it's exciting and it's generating teamwork and it's getting young people to get behind something that's bigger than themselves. Okay? So if you're going to try something like this, which I would encourage you to try some of these activities, whether it's for outreach or whether it's for evangelism, then you want to make sure you explain why you're doing it biblically, and you have some core values behind that. And then you train the people. Listen, we're not just trying to have a good time. We're trying to get the gospel out here. So let's be careful that we're not so focused on the fun time, the fun stuff that we're doing, that we're not ministering the gospel. So philosophy, people. Who are the people? We are the people. Okay, number 3. This is where we get to what we call program. Program. What question does this answer? Okay, what? Yeah. What? What are we actually going to do? And we could spend a lot of time here because there's so many options. So many options. Activities are important. So the way we say this program is anything and everything that touches the life of the teenager or the young person. Anything and everything that touches the life of the camper or the teenager. All right? And so you have a philosophy. You get the right people on board with your philosophy. You train them. You make sure they're servants. And then you plan something in the program that touches the lives of the campers. And here's another statement I want to give you that helps us to kind of understand the philosophy behind our program. So if I'm going to give, why do we have a program? Because we want to build bridges and we want to break down barriers. Build bridges and break down barriers. And what's amazing is sometimes a simple activity like kicking a ball or throwing water balloons or sliding down, as I saw in recently here at the church, they sent a group to Vanuatu, and they showed I saw a video that one of the guys posted that had all the kids sliding down a slip and slide. They had put this giant plastic tarp down, and they had sprayed it with water and soap, and it was, it almost brought tears to my eyes to watch all those kids in Vanuatu sliding head first down this slip and slide with soap all over them, and it was unbelievable. Simple little activity like that, what does it do? It builds bridges to their hearts, and it's breaking down barriers. And what's amazing is I think especially when you have an extended time of this, like at camp, when every day they're having all these cool activities, they have lots of fun things to do, but every day also they're hearing God's word 3 times a day, plus they're reading their Bible in God and I time, devotional time, plus they're having a small group with their counselor. What's happening is both of those in the same day, and it's happening every day. And what happens is over the week, you'll watch kids who came in like this. I dare you to tell me anything about God. And by the end of the week, they're like, tell me more. Why? Because what you're doing is through the activities, you're building bridges to their heart. And again, the whole goal is philosophy. The whole goal is we want them to live for the glory of God. And we're just using the program to break down those barriers that maybe they have. And you know what's really great is young people love to have a good time. And it's important that we show them a good time, a godly good time. And so there's all kinds of different activities and events that you can put into that. I wish I had time to give you 10, 15 different games that you could try, okay? But probably, this is probably the truth, that in our culture, some of the games we would enjoy, you wouldn't enjoy in your culture. And I just want to encourage you to be creative. Be creative. And make it exciting. Make it fun for the young people. And often the other thing you include here is not only fun, but food. Right? Food. It's amazing how food breaks down barriers. Did the donuts break down any barriers today? Okay. See, you're listening better because of the donuts, right? So you got fun and food. And maybe we could put something else in there. Fellowship, right? Friends. Fellowship. Can you see I like to alliterate everything? All right, so program is anything and everything that touches the life of the camper. And be creative and make it fun. Have some food, have some friendships, and you'll have a great activity that will fulfill your philosophy. Now, number 4. And maybe some of you could have picked this out. Place. And this answers the question, what? Where? And depending on what type of activity you're doing, that would answer this question for us. If you're going to have an overnight camp, then you need to find a camp that's safe. It's pretty obvious, right? It needs to be safe. It needs to be clean. Okay, it needs to be a place where you feel like you have some containment. There's control. For example, you would not want to rent a facility where people were really spread out. If you have a small group, maybe let's say you have a camp and you're running for 20 teenagers, and maybe you have 5 to 10 workers. You wouldn't want to have the girls staying like in this place like where they had to walk a long distance, and then in order to go to the place you're going to play your games, you got to walk another long distance. Ideally, you would want to have a more centralized location. But remember, this is in order of importance. I have been places in the world where you just thought to yourself, how are we ever going to run camp here? But you know what? We had the right philosophy. We had the right people. And they had a good program and trained people were doing the program. And you know what? You can run camp almost anywhere. So there's some ideal places that you could get, but don't let this stop you from running camp or running an activity. You can do really fun things at a lot of different places. Now typically, ministries that suffer, what do? They flip-flop this. Right? And what becomes very, very important to some ministries? Well, we need to have a facility. If we don't have a facility, we can't really have church. So they say, now that we have our facility, we have to attract people. Right? So we got to make it awesome. We got to make it cool. We got to draw people in with the program. And then the third thing they think about is, who's going to do this with us? Where are the people that are going to do this at our place and fulfill our program? And then sadly, this is why so much philosophy is compromised. Right? Because we start thinking about this and this before we lay down why we're doing what we're doing. You can't operate a ministry like this because what will happen is pragmatism will reign. You know what pragmatism is, right? Pragmatism is the end justifies the mean. And as long as I'm filling up my place with people because I have a cool program, this stuff is not as important. And this is why ministries compromise. One of the reasons why ministries compromise. So that's why I said at the beginning, all of this does not just apply to youth and teen ministry, but it really applies to everything. And actually, I think about this even with my own family. And why do I do what I do? Thankfully, I know the people. That's me and my wife. And my place is my home. That's the big trailer out there. And that trailer out there, I actually get to tow with me all across the country. And the program, I've had to decide as a dad, what we're going to do with our children, how we're going to minister with our children. It's a little bit different, but it's a similar thing. And this could even apply to our own personal choices of life, right? So I think this is a very helpful way to think about teen ministry, youth ministry, activities, camp, those kinds of things, especially because a lot of people they think about what's the activity we're going to have. And they don't even think about why we're having the activity, and do we have the people that can do the activity. It's all about just have an activity. As long as we have an activity, we're doing youth ministry. No, youth ministry is here. Youth ministry is training the next generation that they might set their hope in God. Psalm 78 is a great passage for that. That helps us to see what youth ministry is. That they might set their hope in God and not forget the works of the Lord. There has to be a passion here. And then all of this will flow out of that passion. Okay, does this make sense? I wish we had more time, but This is just kind of whetting your appetite for this type of ministry. And I'm just encouraging you to be energetic about it, be creative about it, and reach young people and teenagers with this type of ministry. Activities, camp, evangelistic outreaches, but make sure we're doing it in the right way, the right order. Philosophies, why we do what we do. People, who are the people? We are the people. Program, anything that touches the people, anything that touches the campers. And then place, that's the facility, that's the location where you're going to carry on the activity. Okay, I hope this is helpful.